Alrighty, alright. Good morning, or not good morning. Sorry, I'm used to saying good morning here. Good evening, everybody. At least for those of you here in the United States or our part of the world. Yes, good. A good day or a good night to everyone here. It is a pleasure to be here, and yes, I am very glad to be covering this topic. It's a very, very, very important topic, and one that, well, quite frankly, uh, there's a lot of misunderstanding about. We have a lot of misunderstanding about wholeness, about holism, about what it's all about, and I just want to try and offer a clarification for these things. Now, that being said, I believe I've covered this before in a live stream, but I don't think it's actually recorded on my YouTube channel or on my Facebook page. So, that being said, we're going to go ahead and move towards this. So that being said, before we go anywhere else, we're going to go ahead and get started, and then we will dive right on in. Or we'll get started with a word of prayer, and then we will dive right on in. So let's bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your grace, for your mercy, for your love, for your kindness, and for your tender regard for us. And Lord Jesus, I want to thank you as well for your mercy and your patience with us. And Lord, I just ask that you would please be with us right now. Please fill us with your Spirit. And I ask, Lord, that you would please send this out to whoever needs it. And moreover, that you would work in us so that we would have these things applied to our lives, that we would cooperate with you in this. Thank you again, Lord, so much for everything. Please keep us, Lord, and help us to understand these things. In Jesus' name we pray and ask these things. Amen. Alrighty. Well, once again, thank you very much, everybody, for being here. And we're going to go ahead and get started with the topic of wholeness. Now, this is, as I said, a very, very important topic that does get a lot of attention, but not a lot of definition. We hear, I know that I have heard quite a bit about people talk about how, oh well, we look for the whole person, we treat the whole person, we look, we use natural remedies that can help the whole person, not just one part of it. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's a good thing. We do need to look at the human being as a whole entity, not just as individual pieces and parts. We need to look at something systemically. But what does it mean, though? What is wholeness? What does it mean to be a whole person? And what does wholeness reference in regards of health, and also of remedies and food as well? So wholeness is really, really important, and that's what we're going to be taking a look at today. So that's where we're going to go ahead and dive right on in. First of all, what does wholeness mean? When it comes to natural health, when it comes to diet, when it comes to a person, what does wholeness mean? What does that mean? Well, wholeness is the idea, essentially, of looking at health, especially when it comes to the human being, not just looking at the physical side of a person, but looking at the other facets of being a person as well. This is more than just the body, right? This is all the other parts of it too, and we'll talk about what those parts are, what those facets are in a moment, but we're looking at not just the physical side of things. We're going beyond that. That's what wholeness, when it comes to physical health, actually means. It also includes the idea that some natural remedies should be used before others. This includes, and it's beyond even that, it also includes the idea that remedies should also be as whole as possible. Of course, diet-wise, a whole food, plant-based diet, a whole food is a food that has been as little processed as possible, and whole remedies are also the same kind of a thing, whole herbs and such. It's very, very important. But some remedies are better than others, and this is also part of what it means to to use wholeness as a, when it comes to natural health and natural healing. Wholeness really, or this idea of using some remedies before others, is really based on the idea that some remedies have stronger or have greater or lesser effects on the body, and depending on which remedy it is, some may have a more powerful effect, some may have a less powerful effect, and depending on the person and the issue and such, it really changes how much you want. A remedy that works for one person may not work for another. A remedy that is very, very strong, maybe very, very good in some cases, but very, very bad in others. You don't want to necessarily do something right off the bat. And of course, something else, and actually I can testify, there are things that, yes, you do need strong remedies for, but there are oftentimes things that you just simply don't need a remedy that strong. You want something, instead of strong and overpowering, simple and recuperative. And this is very, very important. And actually, if you watched the Sacred History this last week, where we talked about Paracelsus, then you'll know that that was something that he also taught, that all the way back in the 16th century. And so the idea that some remedies are stronger than others and therefore some should be used before others is very, very important and is a part of wholeness or holism. If you try to use remedies, now this is very, very important. If you try to use remedies while focusing on only one facet of a human being, instead of looking at the whole person, you're actually going to be doing more harm than good. Now, that being said, I do want to say modern medicine does a pretty good job of dealing with the physical side of things. But unfortunately, what modern medicine really doesn't do well is look at the whole person, the whole entity, and see how what they're doing affects. And they're getting better. They're getting better. Don't get me wrong. They're getting better at it. They're starting to realize that your mental health really does affect your physical health, and and so on. That's very important. They're starting to realize that, but it's only just, and it hasn't really made a huge transition the way it really should. So it's really important for us to recognize that we don't want to just deal with, we want health. And if you want to make someone healthy, if you want someone to be healthy, you can't just focus on physical health. There's other things beyond that too. Now, there are 3 facets of human health. What is a facet? Well, a facet is a part or an aspect. It's some piece of, the original term is used to describe a side of a gemstone or something like that. Multifaceted, for example, is a phrase that could refer to a particular cut of gemstone, or it could be referred to a person or an issue that is more complicated than before, because it has more parts, more sides to it. And the human being is made up of 3 facets, 3 parts or 3 pieces. And those pieces are the physical aspect, the mental facet, the physical facet, the mental facet, and the relational facet. And we're going to start off with physical. Your physical facet is broken down, and each of these facets, by the way, are broken down into 2 subfacets, 2 subcategories. Your physical facet is your body and what you do with it. That's basically it. It's your body and what you do with it. This is your anatomy and physiology. That's your body and what happens, what your body does naturally. And it's also your habits. This is very, very important. Your physical facet, once again, is your body. That's your anatomy and your physiology. And it's also your habits, what you do with your body. That's very, very important. We often will focus on only the anatomy and physiology, just your body. But your habits are also very, very important. What you do with your body is just as important as the kinds of situations that are in your body. So it's really, really important for us to recognize that. Then there's the mental facet. The mental facet is how you view the world and how you react to it. How you view the world and what you see, or rather what you interpret the world to be around you, how you view the world, and how you react to that viewpoint. This is your cognition, your worldview, your belief systems, and so on, your self-talk and whatnot, and also your emotion, which is how you respond to the world around you. You also have the relational facet, which is your connection with God and with other human beings, your spiritual and your social aspects. And so this is really, really important to remember. It's really, really, really important. Again, physical, mental, and relational. It's your body and what you do with it, how you view the world and how you react to that view, and your connection to God and your connection with other human beings. These are the three facets of a human being. Everything else, everything that is in a human being falls under these categories. Now, one of the things, well, I'll talk about that. Never mind. I'll talk about that when we get to a part. So first, let's cover physical health. Let's cover the physical facet of a human being. Let's cover that. Once again, it's your anatomy and your physiology. This is how your body is built and how it functions. This is very, very important. These are your organs, your organ systems, and what they do. Your muscles, your bones, your brain, your nose, your eyes. All of those and everything else too is your anatomy, and then what they actually do, all the biological processes that you go through. For example, you've got meiosis, mitosis, the cellular processes, you've got, of course, metabolism, catabolism. You have, of course, as well, elimination and blood clotting and digestion and all those things. Those are all part and parcel of your body, of your physical aspect. It's how your body is built and how it functions. This is what most people want to change. This is what most people want to deal with. This is where your weight, your blood pressure, your other things like that are. How you look, that sort of a thing. That's all your physical aspect. This is where most people want to change. And this is where most people will feel that they have a need. But your habits are really what's key for your physical health. Your habits are what you do with your body. This is essentially most people don't want to change these, but your habits are what change your anatomy and physiology. So if you want to lose weight, you got to change your physical habits. This is something that I need to do too. I'm not saying this is somebody who is perfect in every way, in health. I'm not. I still have things that I need to do too. I need to get up and exercise more. I just got back from a big old long walk because I decided I've been sitting around all day. You know what? I need to move. And, not to put anything on me, necessarily as saying, oh, look how good I am for getting up and walking. If anything, I'm kind of ashamed that I don't do that more. But, I want to let you guys know, I'm just like you guys. I still have things that I struggle with in this regard, and that's okay. It's okay to struggle. It's okay to maybe not feel like it all the time, but your habits are what change your anatomy and physiology by and large. Now, there are exceptions to this. Pathogens, for example, and things that come in. You can't weightlift your way through a broken bone, right? That's those things are different. You can't do lifestyle changes for for a car accident where you've had, several lacerations and some other things too, You can't do that. But habits, by and large, when you want to make a change in your, with how you look or how you, how you feel, something like that, or if you want to change your blood pressure, your cholesterol, or if you want to get rid of some kind of lifestyle disease, then your habits are really the way to go. I know that can sometimes be unpopular because it's hard to change. It's hard to change your lifestyle. It's hard to change the way that you live. And that's true. Most people don't want to change their lifestyle, and that's okay. We're creatures of habit. And it's okay to not want to change those habits, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we shouldn't change them. And so if you want to make a change in your anatomy and physiology, you've got to make a change with what you do with your body, not just try and change your body. It doesn't quite work like that for the vast majority of people. Now, moving to the mental facet. So this is the mind here we're talking about. Once again, there's two parts to this. The first part here is your cognition. Now, that's a $10 word, as I like to say, and it basically just means it's your thoughts and your belief systems. This is what you believe. This is how you talk to yourself, your self-talk, your worldview, your thoughts, and all sorts of things. It's the way that you see the world around you. It's the way that you see people around you. It's the way that you see God, and it's the way you see yourself. All of these things are part of your cognition, part of your thought processes, your worldview. This is, again, and it's not just about those things. It's also about events that happen around you. It's your perspective on these things. A lot of people seem to think, oh, well, the way I see things is the right way. Well, yes, absolutely. And that's only natural. But it's not always the case. The way that we see things may not always be accurate, right? And so that's really important to recognize. Connected to cognition is emotion. Emotion is another part of our mental health, and it's something that we often neglect. We will usually neglect one or the other of these. Cognition doesn't always get neglected, and emotion doesn't always get neglected, but usually if one is really, is pushed, the other is neglected. And so we want to make sure that we don't really try and, put too much focus on one or the other, because our emotions are important and our cognition is also important. We can't really leave either behind. That being said, our emotions, our feelings, are how we react to the world and to events around us. So this is how we react to these things, and more specifically, they are how we react to our perception of those things. So emotions, and this is a big thing here, emotions are always an appropriate response to the perceived event or person or whatever it may be that you're experiencing. When you experience an emotion, you are having an emotional reaction that's appropriate to how you perceive the situation that you are in. The question then is, well, is my perception accurate at this time? Now, there are people who do have emotion disorders and things like that. Don't get me wrong, there are exceptions to this, but by and large, for the average person, your feelings are a direct result of what you think, of what you perceive. Now, again, that's not always the case. There are exceptions, but those are few and far between. By and large, for the most part, human beings our emotions are managed and grow out from what we think and how we perceive the world around us. Our thoughts, our beliefs, our worldview, our self-talk is the root of our emotions. Now, I have heard people make the argument that, oh, well, no, it can't be, because emotions will rise up faster than our thought processes can allow. And that is true. However, that does not negate this, because a belief can be so ingrained that our brain will actually just, go to it because that's what it perceives to be so. And so when we perceive something as happening a certain way, we will react a certain way as a result of that. And if we have a certain thought process, we may not have an audible voice or a noticeable thought per se, but we will have, it's an ingrained belief system, not just a thought. And so our cognition, our thoughts, our beliefs, our worldview, those are the root of our emotional reactions, of our emotions. There's nothing wrong with that. Emotions are not evil. Emotions are not wrong. Emotions are not bad or dangerous any more than our thoughts are. The only real thing is that sometimes they don't make sense. But that's because, again, it's rooted in worldviews, in thoughts, in belief systems, and so because of that, it does actually have some order and structure to it. It's just that we can't always see it. Now, besides mental health and physical health, there's another one that we often talk about or we misunderstand, and this is probably the single most misunderstood of all the facets of a human being. That's the relational facet. I cannot overstate just how misunderstood this facet is, especially the spiritual side of it. I have heard a lot of people, I've been all over the place, and I don't talk bad against people, but against teachings that are not correct or against ideas and concepts that are not correct, I do speak against those, only because I want to make sure that people know what they're getting into, that people know what's right, know what's true, because the truth is super important. It does have an effect. And I've heard a lot of people, and a lot of people who are very interested in health, they'll talk about spiritual health a lot, whether they're Christian or neo-pagan or Wiccan or Buddhist or Hindu or whatever the case might be, or Taoist or whatever else. And they'll talk about the spiritual part of our health, and they will say that they give the impression that it is some esoteric, arcane, and unknowable force or thing, and it's really connected to the mind. That's mainly what spiritual health is linked to, and that's just quite frankly not the case. Now, I'll grant you that it is rooted in there is a thought process that goes on, and beliefs are important, but that's our cognition that we talked about before. That's not our spiritual health. Our cognition can have an impact on our spiritual health, and that's absolutely the case. But what we think and how we feel is not spiritual health, that's mental health. Spiritual health has to do with the connection or the relationship that you have with God, with the divine. It's how you interact with Him. That's super important to understand, because if you don't understand it, you won't have healthy spiritual health. You just can't, because you're not connecting with real spirituality. Spirituality is not something that is undefinable. It's not something that is disconnected from everything else. As a matter of fact, spiritual health, spirituality is something that is incredibly interconnected. It is a connection, not just some esoteric, like, oh, I feel a connection. That's not true. It is a relationship. It is a relational connection. Spiritual health is relational in nature, and this is something that unfortunately is not really known. It's a huge misunderstanding, and it's just so important for us to really get. We need to understand that spiritual health is a relationship between us and God, not just some undefined or vaguely defined thing. Now, many Christians will focus on this exclusively. Many Christians and other religions as well will focus on the spiritual aspect of a person and exclude everything else. And that's just not right. If you've watched anything that I've said, any of my presentations in the past, or any of the Bible studies or anything like that, you'll know that even as a Christian, the Bible is very, I read the Bible, and it's very clear that the gospel is more than just the spiritual side of a human being, that it involves the whole person. The Greek word sozo really means to heal or to deliver from death, whether spiritual death or physical death or any other kind of death. And this is something that the Gospels in particular use to describe the work of Jesus, both in healing and in saving from sin. And so the idea that there is that the gospel is something that is exclusively spiritual in nature or in character is not biblical. And it's unfortunate that we just don't really understand that there's a lot of people out there who just don't know, and that's okay. God is very, very gracious to those of us who don't know. And a lot of us, nobody knows everything, right? We're going to be constantly learning, even throughout the ceaseless ages of eternity. We'll always be learning something new. But, this is something that, unfortunately, there's a lot of focus on in some circles, and there's a tendency to neglect the other parts of a human being, and that's really sad. It's really unfortunate. And again, not to speak against anyone who has thought like this or who teaches this. I know a great many people who think like this, and it's unfortunate, and I feel badly for them. And because I am so glad that I serve a God who cares about my body, not just about my spiritual self, and that's so amazing. But that being said, there needs to be a shift in focus, not away from spiritual health or from spirituality, but kind of to encompass the gospel, not just with spiritual health, but also with the whole person, physical, mental, and relational. And there's more than just spirituality involved in the relational part of the human being. There is also the social aspect, and this is actually something that, well, I'll say that in a bit. The social aspect of a human being, of the relational part, is the connection that we have with other human beings and how we interact with those human beings. This is huge. And to be quite honest, this is often ignored entirely by natural health advocates and Christians alike. We simply don't talk about this. Now, I know that there has been, that this is something that has been felt very strongly over the past year or so. Goodness, it's already been about a year since everything happened, lockdown and all that stuff. And yes, we do feel this social lack, and this is something that people are now starting to really recognize. And even before this started, within the past 5 to 10 years or so, people have started doing a ton of research on just how important social health and social connection is, because we in the Western world just simply don't have it as much, especially in America. We just don't have social connections the way that we used to. And part of that has to do with our, especially in America, with our lawsuit-happy culture. Part of it has to do with the fears of allegations and things like that. It's really unfortunate. And, there are appropriate boundaries, but there are also situations where, we just simply don't do things the way that we should. A lot of our social connections are simply bad, or poor. I'll say poor, not because necessarily the individuals are bad people, but because our connections with them just aren't well built. And that's not really to talk against anyone who is in these relationships, but it's more to do with just the fact that our culture just doesn't encourage us to build strong relationships like we used to. And this is, again, something that really, other cultures, especially not in the West, are much, much better, and especially not in America. You go outside of America, and the culture anywhere outside of the United States is a lot more family-oriented, a lot more relationship-oriented. Just evidenced by the fact alone that Americans only get, on average, about 2 weeks of vacation time per year, while other countries, for example, in Europe, will get, say, a full month, oftentimes. And now there are other cultures that work harder than Americans do, but even so, we just don't have as much of a strong familial tie as we really used to. Our relationships have really degraded, and on top of that, not only do have our relationships kind of degraded in quality, but also our interactions with each other have become over time less and less and less physical. Now, this is something that different cultures, again, also have different ideas about. You go to Finland, and 6 feet apart, 2 meters apart, that's something they do anyway. um, and again, that's a generalization, but, even so. But you go to, like, Italy, maybe not so much, right? Or South America, or the Middle East. Any of those places, there's a lot, there are different perspectives on personal space, what's appropriate for family members, what's not appropriate for family members. So there's a lot when it comes to, these ideas of social interaction and touch and affection and all these other things. This is very much something that has degraded over time in the West, especially in America. And it's a real big problem. As a matter of fact, I recall reading several articles that were stating that studies are showing now that one of the greatest problems among people of my generation anyway, and around my generation, a generation behind me and the generations ahead of me, one of the biggest things is a problem called skin hunger. This is where people, especially young adults, just simply aren't touching anybody for weeks, months. And of course, now with everything that has gone on, this is very much the case. There are plenty of people who have gone without touch for months and months and months and months, and I would not be surprised in the least if there was at least one person who has not had touch or interaction with, has not had any physical interaction with anybody, not even so much as a high five, for a whole year. I wouldn't be surprised in the least. And this is something that unfortunately more and more people are dealing with as a result of, yes, this pandemic, but beyond that, this has been a problem since before then. It's been a major problem. It's such a huge and unfortunate problem. Our social health is really, really neglected in the Western world, and this is something, again, that's ignored almost across the board. It doesn't matter really who you are. Social health is hugely neglected. And this is something that I really feel, as someone who happens to be on the autism spectrum. I feel this. I'm on the autism spectrum, but I often see things from the way that people who are not on the spectrum see it. I happen to work in a place where I work with, in my case, teens who are on the spectrum, and they, how shall I put this? And so I have to teach social skills and things like that, which are things that I learned myself, and other things as well, survival skills, not like that, but real life, everyday things that you're gonna, like how to do your taxes and things like that, budgeting and home maintenance and other things like that they're not taught, or they just don't necessarily know. Things that other people might learn if they had good, strong connections with the family. But I'm finding that even normal people who are not on the spectrum, don't know many of these things. And it's really, really, astonishing to me just how little that how far we've come in leaving behind so much of our culture, so much of practical things. People used to teach parents used to teach their kids how to cook. Parents, dads used to teach their kids how to change tires, or moms, could be either. Change tires, do housekeeping and things like that. And some parents still do, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot less of them. And, that's on the parents. That's not on the kids. I've heard a lot of people complain about how a lot of people in my generation and the generation of before me and the generation after me, oh, they can't change a tire. Well, you know why? Because they weren't ever taught. We weren't ever taught. I was. I was. Um, but not all of us were. And that's, even if the parents did know. So it's not on us. And so, it's anyway. That's a tangent. But our social health, this is all connected to our social health. And it's such a big, big issue. In fact, one of the major causes of depression people are finding is actually a lack of touch. It's amazing. And if you go back all the way back to the 13th century, one of the first major clinical trials ever conducted was conducted by none other than an emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, which wasn't Roman, it was German. And this German German emperor said, hey, you know what? I want to see what language children will speak if they aren't spoken to at all. I want to know what language people will naturally speak. Maybe it'll be the language of heaven. Maybe it'll be German. Probably be German. At least that's, he's crossing his fingers. Oh, I think it'll be German. And he goes and he takes away a number of babies, newborn babies, from their parents, from their mothers especially. And he gave them into the care of nurses. These nurses were not to touch the children any more than to feed them. And they were not to speak to them at all. They weren't to have any interaction with the babies. They weren't to have, they were just to feed the babies, and that's it. That's all they were there for. Every single one of the babies died. And this was really the first experiment that really showed just how important touch and human interaction is. Now, infants are less robust than us adults, but our systems are no less, are still sensitive to that. And if a lack of interaction can kill infants, would it not also kill us if a little bit more slowly? And so it's really, really important for us to recognize that, yes, social interaction is hugely important. We desperately need social interaction. It's so, so, so vitally important. Alrighty. We're going to change gears here. Now that we've looked at the three parts of a human being, and once again, those are physical, mental, and relational. Those are the three facets of a human being. Now we're going to look at the relational hierarchy. This is something also that is very, very, very important. How we use natural remedies. What kind of remedies should come first? And this is so very, very important. And this is something that I'm also carrying over into, with my schooling, with my learning that I'm going through right now. I'm actually carrying this over. This is something that I have found myself to be very much the case. And this is something that I generally rely on, the remedial hierarchy. First off, the first thing you want to look at, will lifestyle habits have an effect on this? Will lifestyle habits have an effect on this? It should be the very, very first thing you do. And the reason is because you need to put your body under the circumstances under which it was supposed to function. If we do not have the body in its ideal circumstances, your body does not have the best chance of accomplishing things, even with help from other things. Now, obviously, there are limitations to this. If you're 50 pounds overweight, you can't just do that overnight, right? If you're 50 pounds overweight and you have, if you have issues with, not being able to support your own weight, just for argument's sake, well, if you have issues related to excess weight, well, then, you can't just get rid of that all at once, but you change those habits, your body will be able to do something. If you have issues with diabetes and you have excess weight, you have an unhealthy diet, and you try and use natural remedies and things like that, it's not going to really be any better for you than it's not going to really do anything uh, different than if you were to go down and buy a vitamin or a supplement. It's not going to work. I'm sorry, but natural remedies can't work. Especially herbs. They those things are helpers for your body to get back in line. These things don't cure. They don't really treat. What's happening with natural remedies, and this is a huge thing to understand, and with any medication, this is whether it's medication prescribed by your doctor or anything else, it's not truly the medication that's doing anything in your body per se. Oh yes, it does have effects in the body. That's why we take it. That's why we do these things, because of the intended effects in our body. But these medications ultimately, or natural remedies, or whatever they may be, all they are doing is facilitating the body to do its own healing. Okay. This is the case with conventional medicine and also natural remedies. This is something that is hugely important that not a whole lot of people understand. And there have been arguments spawned over this, including the whole vitalism versus atomism debate. And that's very much something that has been around for quite some time, and it really misses the point. Vitalism is correct in that it is the body that does the healing, not the medication, not the natural remedy. That's very, very important, and it's foundational to understand. It's the body, not the medicine, not the natural remedy, not anything else that does the healing. And so in order for your body to have that healing, you need to put it under the appropriate parameters under which it was designed to function. Now, that being said, sometimes conventional medicine is the best way to do that. Surgery, for example, is sometimes necessary. You may need to take out something that isn't supposed to be there. You may need to, there's also, realignment of bones and things like that. There's lots of things, lots of ways that we actually do this on a day-to-day basis. Vaccines even do this. Vaccines really are there to boost your immune system. That's the whole point. And so, it's all about facilitating your body to do the healing of itself. That's the whole point of it. That said, lifestyle habits are also a big part of that. As a matter of fact, they may actually be even bigger in a lot of cases, though not in every case. In a lot of cases, especially in the Western world, we need to change our lifestyle habits. No, not in every case. Some people have very good lifestyle habits and they still get sick. Because it's not just vitalism. There's also atomism in there too, right? The idea, that yes, it's not just how you keep your body. There are also things that can come in that can really ruin your day. Food poisoning, perfect example. Perfectly healthy person can still get sick because they ate food that was left out a little too long. That's not That's not vitalism. That's atomism. So lifestyle habits are very, very, very important. And we need to understand this. And of course, we just finished our series on the restored acronym. Rest, enough water, sunlight, temperance, oxygen, relationships, exercise, and diet. Those are the 8 principles of a healthy lifestyle. And if you want to check that out, I've just assembled them all into a playlist. Check it out on my YouTube channel. I actually forgot to mention it. My YouTube channel, that is The King's Bard on YouTube and also on Facebook as well. So please do check that out. I have a lot of stuff archived there. So please do check out all that stuff. I just finished the presentations on that, so do check that out. Hydrotherapy is the next bit. When it comes to natural remedies, hydrotherapy is really the next one that we're looking at. And the reason is because hydrotherapy, you're not introducing anything new into the system. You're not introducing anything new chemicals into the body. You're not introducing, you're not forcing the body with chemicals. You're not, and whether herbal or otherwise, or homeopathic or anything else, right? What you're doing is you're just manipulating the body's response to different temperatures of water. That's it. So basically all you're doing is you're saying, hey, body, focus here, without actually doing it chemically. All you're doing is just using temperature, and it's really important. It's really fascinating. I have done a few presentations on hydrotherapy. Please do check those out as well. Herbalism is next on the hierarchy, and really there are actually two kinds of herbalism that I split this into. You've got your simple herbs first. Now these herbs in particular are herbs that are less potent and less potentially harmful. These are the ones you want to use first. These herbs are less potent. That means that, yes, they may have weaker effects, but that's the point. You don't do something that has the potential to do more harm first. What you want to do is make sure that if you can take care of something without doing, how shall I say this? If you can take care of something without having nasty side effects, without having, without the risk of major harm, that's what you're going to go with first. At least that's what you should go with first. And this is really, really important. Simple herbs should always be your first go-to. There are cases where you then, there are cases of people where I might, go a little beyond that, and we'll talk about that in a bit. And this is actually something that, unfortunately, in the 19th century in particular, where most people seem to think to get their opinion of herbal remedies and natural remedies, because they can't think farther back than anyway. In the 19th century, it's a big cultural problem actually in the West. We can't seem to think past the 19th century. But herbalism is something that simple herbs. These are things that you might, or excuse me. Using the stronger stuff first, or the strong stuff first, is something that 19th century physicians and not so much folk herbalists, because folk herbalists kind of did their own thing. You want to find out more, go ahead and check out my presentations, my sacred history on herbal remedies. That will be continuing not this next week, but the week afterward. Once again, I'm taking a break this weekend. No presentations, no stream this weekend. And so, unfortunately, what happened was you had these how shall I say it? These people who were, using and prescribing these incredibly powerful herbs and remedies, pretty much anything. I mean, you would have people prescribing anything from strychnine to cocaine for even something as simple as the common cold. Opium was prescribed in abundance, which created a real problem, and addiction was a big issue. And I mean, tobacco was prescribed for lung issues and things like that, and there are still some problems with that mindset even in the herbal community. I'm sad to say, not so much with tobacco, but with other things. But the idea of prescribing something strong so that you can see it working is unfortunately something that has plagued many people, because we want to see something working, and we think, well, I'm having a strong reaction to this, so therefore it must be working. Well, I mean, yes, but no. You're also causing a lot of potential damage, and so you want to use the simple first. But if that doesn't work, then you're going to want to fall onto the strong herbs after that. These are more potent herbs with more potential for causing harm. These would be things like cathartics, cathartic laxatives, emetics, purgatives, things like that. These are herbs that are very, very strong in nature and have very, very violent actions on the body. You don't necessarily need them. Now, there are cases where you might. I'm just thinking of a case where somebody had asked for help because this relative of theirs was constipated, severely constipated, on tons of regular laxatives and things like that, and nothing was done. It just didn't work. And so I recommended, just as a suggestion, hey, let's, I don't normally do this, but try something strong. Try a cathartic laxative, and I recommended a few that might be useful. And I don't normally recommend herbs like that because they're so strong and there's so much potential for causing harm. But in that particular case, nothing else is probably going to work. The simpler stuff is probably not going to work. And so you really want to make sure that you're judging things based on, well, let's see, how severe is this issue? Sometimes you can bypass steps, and other times you want to make sure you go through them all, right? So it's really, really important to. I did also say, hey, enemas that might be useful. And so, these things are really, it's really important for us to recognize that. And this is the hierarchy that I have come up with and I have used over the years, and it's something that I plan to use when I actually get to practice overseas in other countries, mainly in Europe. As an herbalist, I still plan to use this because this is something that, well, quite frankly, the Bible teaches, and it's simple. You do the least harm first. Makes sense. Now, lastly, we're going to talk about whole remedies here. What does it mean to be a whole remedy? Well, it's like whole foods. And I kind of mentioned this before. Whole foods are foods that are there is as little processing going on when they're made as possible. Things are as close to their natural state as you can get. So pills, in the case of natural remedies, the same thing applies. Isolated natural remedies, pills, powders, extracts, etc., these things are not ideal. They can still work and sometimes are the only thing that will, but it's really not ideal. And so you want to make sure that as much as possible you're using herbs and things like that, when it comes to herbs anyway, because hydrotherapy is just water at different temperatures, right? So there's that's different. But when it comes to herbs of any sort, you're really wanting to use them as close to their natural state as possible. Pills and extracts are the least useful. Powders are a little better, but they're still not absolutely ideal. The best, is the fresh. And actually, a fresh juice of an herb is probably the single most powerful extract, if you will, and the single most concentrated form of natural remedy that you can get. It's not always available, and sometimes it's not what you want. You're not going to juice marshmallow root or slippery elm bark. That just doesn't work, right? Try juicing cinnamon and see how that works. It's you can't always do it, right? And so there are other things that you can do. There's infusions, there's decoctions, and things like that. You want to know about that? I just check out my Natural Remedies series. I have definitions of terms in each one of those, and so if you want to really know more about that, again, you're looking at you're wanting to try and keep these herbs in particular as close to the natural state as possible. The less processed something is, it's generally true that it's better for you the less processed it is. This is absolutely true with your food, and it's absolutely true as well in a general sense with herbal remedies. So whole herbs are ideal. And the next best thing to that would be the cut and dried and sifted and so on. And then after that, your powders. And then your extracts are going to be kind of there at the very bottom. And that's just because, well, let's face it, extracts and things like that are extracts. You're only isolating maybe one or two actual chemicals, maybe three or four. And that's really, really important. It can work. And I'm not totally against those, right? Any more than I'm not totally against Western medicine either. I think there's a lot of good. I just think that we've kind of lost our focus on what Western medicine really is good at and isn't good at. And its basic philosophy, the allopathic philosophy of, let's drug it. The pure atomism, the idea that, it's just chemicals. It's not just chemicals. There's more than just the physical side of things. And on top of that, the chemicals don't just affect one system, right? So it's really important for us to recognize, but it is important for us to recognize that, these things can still be useful, and in fact, in many cases, are very useful. Extracts and pills included, herbal wise. Well, I say that, but extracts are really above pills. If you go to the store and you buy pills, I'm going to be honest with you, you've wasted your money. And, not again, this is not, being against any individuals who buy these pills, or who even or any company or people that sell them. I'm not against the individuals, but I'm going to be honest. Even if those pills do contain the chemicals that they say they do, which they may or may not, they're isolated. They're processed. It's no different as far as level of processing goes than going out and getting Frosted Flakes and thinking that it's a healthy, balanced breakfast. No, it'll give you energy, yeah, just like the pills may actually give you those chemicals, but is it really the best form that you can get? No. And the same thing applies with herbal pills and things like that. Those just, yeah. Now, vitamin and mineral supplements are different. Okay, those are different. When it comes to herbs, it's not. Yeah, don't bother with those. Just don't buy anything herbal ever. When it comes to pills, just don't ever. If you need an herb, go buy the plants themselves, right? Either the dried plants in a tea form, right, or if you can manage to find a fresh plant, like, goodness, peppermint, spearmint, mint. You can get that, mint, basil, oregano, rosemary, thyme, all those. Yeah, you can buy all those whole. You can probably buy the fresh plant right there. You can't always do that with every herb. And so, if you can get the dried herb, that's also ideal. That's also much better for you than going out and getting the pill. But vitamin and mineral supplements are different. Sometimes those are important and necessary, especially vitamin D, because that isn't naturally found in most foods. And in many parts of the world, you just simply can't get enough sunlight in certain times of year during the wintertime. Yeah, it's really important. I can't. The only reason that I don't have a problem, and that a lot of people where I live don't have a problem, is because of our summertime, where we just have a ton of sunlight. You can't get away from it. So, vitamin and mineral supplements are different. But the whole herb, that's ideal. And I do want to say this as well. Really you don't need anything that's more than one or two herbs at a time. Now, there are exceptions, but my rule of thumb is if there's a compound that's there that uses more than 5 herbs, you should really generally avoid it. Now, there are, again, exceptions. But generally speaking, if it's more than 5 herbs, don't bother. It's not, it's going to be more expensive. You might as well just buy, those herbs individually and compound it the way that you need it. Or at least get somebody who knows what they're doing to compound it for you. Yeah, you don't need something that's more than 5 herbs. I've seen herbal pills, that have 30 ingredients, like 30 different herbs. And I've had people ask me, "Oh, what do you think of this?" And they hold up a picture of this bottle of pills with 30 herbs on the ingredients list. And I have to say, well, those herbs are all great, or most of them are, but, like, do you really need all 30 of them? Like, some of these, like, this one, this one, this one, and this one completely go against the actions of this one, this one, this one, and this one, and they're all in the same formula. So, what? Like, why? It just, no. No, you shouldn't really have compounds of more than 5 herbs at a time. And and that's also partly for allergy reasons too. You don't know what's going to work, what's not good for you. You just don't know. So try 1 or 2 herbs at a time. It's going to be cheaper that way. It's going to be more effective that way, because you're going to be able to actually know what's helping you and what's not. And yeah, so it's really important to make sure that you actually. Oh, the other thing with whole herbs, by the way, you actually know what you're getting. If you grow the plant, of course, that's ideal, because you really know what you're getting then. But even with a dried herb, right, you're pretty certain you know what you're getting. And so you really want to make sure that you know what you're getting, and you can't do that with pills or extracts. Powders, even to some extent, are a little suspicious sometimes, because you don't always know. But with pills and extracts, definitely, you have no idea what's in there. And so, just the bulk herb. you know, I have a ton of them. And you go to certain places. There's good websites out there. I'm not affiliated with these, but for example, Monterey Bay Spice Company. It is a California-based, so for those of you who are in California, it's a great sourcing. I know Frontier Co-op is also there, but they're way more expensive. Monterey Bay Spice Company is cheap. It's super cheap. You can get so much. I got a 5 years worth of herbs for $200, and that's 5 years worth of 10 to 15 different herbs for $200. That's cheap. So it's really, really important that we, that's a really, really good resource. Not affiliated with me at all, but hey, they're great. I use them. Go check them out. They got a lot of stuff. It's fantastic. Anyway, that being said, I'm going to open it up if there are any questions right now, because that's the end of the presentation here. If there are any questions, then we can go ahead and ask them now. So I am going to be talking here in a bit. I'm going to be talking here while we wait, just in case there's any questions that come in. This is the time to type them out. All right. I do want to remind everyone I will not be streaming this weekend, this upcoming weekend, because I am taking a break. I need one. I'm going to be out. Most likely what I'm going to do is just go out and just spend some time in nature, alone with God, just because I kind of need that. So there's no stream. There's no sacred history. There's no Bible study and no bardic session this next weekend. So please do remember that, and go give your local churches some love, because they need it. And if you haven't been, if all you've been doing is me, then please go do give your local churches some love, especially if you're here in California, where we just were told, all right, the Supreme Court sided with us on that. So. We have the right to worship service. So, that being said, alrighty, I'm not seeing any questions at this time. Again, my YouTube channel is The King's Bard, and also my Facebook page by the same name, The King's Bard. If you're new here, a very good welcome to you. I just remembered. Please. The information I gotta offer a disclaimer here. The information in this presentation is not intended for the diagnosis, treatment, prevention, or cure of any disease. If you want to do any of that, if you want to make any changes to your lifestyle, if you want to implement herbs of any sort and that sort of thing, consult with your physician first. I can't believe I forgot. I'm so sorry. But please, please, please don't. Because, yeah. It's just not a wise thing to do. Absolutely consult with a physician before you make any changes or implement any natural remedies or any regimen. Alrighty, well, I don't believe there are any questions at this time. If you do have questions at any point, then please do reach out to me. I am available. I'll answer when I'm available, that is, and I'm more than willing to help to offer any sort of information that I can. I can't diagnose or anything like that. So if you would have a diagnosis, that would be most beneficial. If you already had one to provide information and things like that. But please don't consult me without consulting with your doctor. Right? That's just not a wise thing to do. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical physician. I'm not anything like that. All I can do is offer recommendations of herbs that might work. So if you want to check that stuff out, if you want any kind of information on those things, then please do check me out. Please do contact me. I would be more than happy to do that. Once again, I'm the King's Bard. You can find me on YouTube and on Facebook, also on Twitch. So please do check me out. Anyway, that being said, we have come to the end of the presentation. If you want to know more, if you want to see more things like this, then check my channel out. Like the page, hit like the video, and also hit the subscribe button and that notification bell so you can get notified. I also put up a video today, finally, my music composition. So please do check that out as well. Anyway, that being said, let's go ahead and close out and bow our heads for a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your grace, for your mercy, for your love, and for your kindness. Thank you so much, Lord, that you are a reasonable God and that you care about our bodies and our minds, as well as our spiritual relationship and connection to you, and also our connection with other people. Lord, I just ask that you would please keep us as we go our separate ways, that you would use us and that you would draw us close to you, and that ultimately Jesus would be lifted up. And I ask that you would keep us until we should meet again. Thank you so much. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray and ask these things, and thank you so much. Amen. Alrighty, thank you very much, everyone, for joining me here. I will see you guys next Monday. So please do come on out for that. That's again next Monday, 7 o'clock p.m. We're going to be doing our natural remedies thing. That's the next stream we're going to be doing. So please do check that out. Thank you very much, everyone, and I will see you then.